Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It's time to get out those briefcases and meet your Russian lady friend in a dark alley because we are looking at another Carspiracy theory, plunging into the darker world of motorsport. If you haven't checked out this new series yet, we have already looked at Pedro Rodriguez's massive engine and of course Tyrrell shooting their competitors with lead shot. Go check out those videos after you watch this one. But today we are looking at a team from the mid-2000s, Super Aguri. I know a lot of people were a big fan of this little outfit, so let's take a look at their brief time in Formula 1 and the events that led to their demise, focusing on the mysterious sponsor, who may or may not have played a huge part in the downfall of Aguri Suzuki's little Formula 1 team. So make sure you subscribe and let's jump into the death of Super Aguri. Aguri Suzuki was a Japanese Formula 1 driver, making 65 starts between 1988 and 1995 for a variety of teams, moving from Larousse to Zack Speed, back to Larousse and then Footwork, Jordan and Ligier. His most notable result was a third place for Larousse in 1990 at his home Grand Prix at Suzuka. Outside of Formula 1, Suzuki had success in Japan, winning the National Touring Car and Formula 3000 championships, along with success in sports car racing, getting a podium at Le Mans in 1998 with Nissan. But by then he was beginning to wind down his racing career and began his own racing team, the Autobax Racing Team Aguri, or ARTA as it is more commonly known. This team is now the largest in Japan and has had a 20-year plus association with Honda, winning the Super GT Championship in 2007. But a lot of that is not important to this video. They're the deets at the summit of Mount Fuji, if you will. The important part is that in 2006, Aguri Suzuki would be team principal of a Formula 1 team, the aptly named Super Aguri. Aguri Suzuki would even test the car himself in 2007. By this time, Aguri was running a driver in DTM and had even worked in IndyCar with the Super Aguri Fernandez racing team. That lasted a couple of years. Aguri had an ever-growing portfolio of teams and drivers, and he was about to embark on his biggest challenge yet. Super Aguri came about when Honda decided they wanted a B team, after taking over the British American racing efforts. In 2005, Takuma Sato had only scored a single point, and was replaced for 2006 by the vastly experienced, race-winning Brazilian Rubens Barrichello. This was not a popular decision in Japan. The public were up in arms, rioting in the streets of Tokyo. Alright, it wasn't that bad, but there were probably a few angry emails. Honda decided it was in their best interest to support the career of Takuma Sato, and thus Super Aguri may be the only team in Formula 1 history that was created for a specific driver without being started by that specific driver. Takuma Sato must have a really nice smile, I guess. By late 2005, they had convinced the existing teams to let them on the grid, and the Super Aguri project was a go. But they did not have time to make their own chassis, so they brought one. A 4-year-old Arrows chassis sold by former Minardi CEO Paul Stoddart. Taking an ancient chassis that wasn't successful when it was new may seem like a bad idea, but with a few upgrades, it was enough to get Super Aguri on the grid. Now they needed drivers. Takuma Sato was obviously number one on the list, but Aguri Suzuki wanted Japanese talent, and so he turned to Yuji Ida, a 31-year-old who didn't have any European racing experience, didn't speak English, and was very clearly out of his depth. I will point out here though, he is not the worst Formula 1 driver ever. He was replaced by Frank Montagny pretty quickly, after Ida nearly killed Christian Albers at the San Marino Grand Prix. Later, the just as hopeless Sakon Yamamoto would drive the car, before Anthony Davidson joined Sato for 2007, after a delayed launch due to the new car failing a crash test. Not very confidence-inspiring for the drivers, but the team did bring in new sponsors, the SS United Group Oil and Gas Company. We will get back to them in a bit. Takuma Sato would score the team's only points in 2007 with a best 6th at the Canadian Grand Prix. Anthony Davidson could have scored points too, but he hit a gopher. Maybe a sign of the team's fortunes changing for the worse. By 2008, the signs of the end times were coming. The launch was delayed due to the uncertain future of the team, and they did not score points at the first 4 races. After a failed takeover by an organisation known as the Magma Group, Bernie Eccleston helped pay for them to compete at their final race in Spain. On arriving for the Turkish Grand Prix, the team's trucks were refused entry. Shortly after, the team entered administration and disappeared from Formula 1. The assets were brought by German businessman Franz Hilmer of Hilmer Motorsport fame. He tried to enter Formula 1 in 2010 using the Brabham name, but failed to get onto the grid. On a happier note, a lot of the Super Aguri staff moved to the Honda team, staying on for Braun's run at the championship in 2009 and being part of the Mercedes revolution. That is the story of the Super Aguri Formula 1 team. Now let's look at all of the individual players and the conspiracies that led to their unfortunate end. Firstly, the sponsor, SS United Group Oil and Gas Company. The story I always heard was that this company somehow scammed Super Aguri and are the reason the team ran out of money and went into administration. Trusting anything called SS is generally a bad idea, but the most common thought is that this fraudulent organisation defaulted on payments and that is why Super Aguri couldn't carry on in Formula 1. Is that true? Yes and no. So who are the SS United Group? Well, they are a Hong Kong-based joint venture oil trading company, a shady world of buying oil cheap and selling it for a profit. Commodity trading is evil, controlling the price of oil, petrol, gas and coal and such things, usually at the expense of the peasants who rely on these things on a daily basis to survive. There are plenty of dodgy characters and companies in this space, and I'm sure there are YouTube videos that go into them a lot better than I ever could. There is not a lot of information on the SS United Group, and their website no longer exists, so it's possible they do not either. Takahisa Kato, Takatoshi Saito, Yoshiaki Tamura, Soren Kierkegaard, and Robert Adamsworth are employees I can find the names of, but I can't find anything on them or what happened to the company. What I do know is that there was a financial crisis in 2008.
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt, and financial markets from Asia to Europe are doing their utmost to prevent Monday from turning from dark to black.
This would have affected the SS United Group, and maybe they just saw the signs in 2007 and couldn't afford to pay Super Aguri, going out of business themselves at some point around the same time. We can call this conspiracy unsolved given how little there is about the group, but there are others involved in the death of Super Aguri. Honda. We've discussed previously they have had a history of dipping in and out of Formula 1 like an STD-ridden teenager you met in Ibiza. They could have bankrolled Super Aguri until they found new sponsors or were taken over. But they were ending their own Formula 1 efforts after 2008 and maybe just saw this as an opportunity to get the Aguri team off the books. It was Honda Racing CEO Nick Fry who stopped the Super Aguri team entering the Turkish Grand Prix, after informing the race stewards they would not be taking part. Apparently they didn't check with Aguri Suzuki, who may have disagreed. Honda failing to commit to Formula 1, to me at least, is the biggest knife in the back of Super Aguri. Nick Fry and the Magma Group. As we mentioned, Nick Fry stopped the team from taking part in the 2008 Turkish Grand Prix, but there is more to it than that. He played a big part in the failed takeover by the Magma Group. Nick Fry wanted Super Aguri's debts paid in full, whereas the Magma Group presented a payment plan to pay it off over time. The two sides couldn't agree and the deal was off. The Magma Group did buy a portion of Super Aguri at the start of 2008, and Luca Filippi almost drove for the team, instead joining ART in GP2 and never racing in Formula 1. But without a deal to acquire the team in full, Magma pulled out of the deal and left Super Aguri to their fate. So that is the conspiracy of the Super Aguri Formula 1 team. Which of these players caused the most damage to Super Aguri? Well, all of them in some way. SS United Group not paying sponsorship funds were the start of the dominoes falling into place, But given Honda were about to pull the plug yet again on their own Formula 1 team, Aguri would have had to find a new sugar daddy anyway. Nick Fry and the Magma Group played their part. Nick Fry, whether or not for his own reasons or encouraged to do so by others, seemingly had no interest in the future of Super Aguri, whilst Magma, not having the funds to buy the team outright, was giving them false hope for the future. If they could have survived 2008, then Super Aguri may have had a chance of surviving, with new sponsors and a new engine provider. But given the massive rule changes in 2009, it would have been a massive effort to keep them on the grid and competitive. The Magma Group no longer exists, neither do the SS United Oil and Gas Company. Honda are still very non-committal about being in Formula 1, and Nick Fry is working for McLaren. Takuma Sato has done alright for himself, having a long stint in IndyCar, even winning the Indy 500 twice. Sakon Yamamoto got Formula 1 drives for way longer than he should have. Frank Montagny had to retire from racing because of cocaine. Anthony Davidson is a pundit on Sky Sports. And Yuji Ida has had successful moments in Japan, taking wins in Formula Nippon and Super GT. And as for Aguri Suzuki, well, his team is still racing in Japan and going strong. Still partnered with Honda, this has been his sole focus except for a brief stint in Formula E. And that is the sunshine at the end of this gloomy video. Thank you for watching, make sure you subscribe, and have a good one.